Good evening and welcome to another video. Okay, I'm going to show you the outside of my car, and what you could see from here is Birmingham's rag market. Anyway, let's forget all this and let's talk about an email you would have received on your app today. And it starts off by talking about how everybody wants to get from A to B safely, like, you know, us drivers wasn't doing that anyway. And from next week there's going to be a new feature they're coming out with. Now obviously, if you take note on this, this is actually done after the 180 days of change, which obviously has been finished about a month ago. And also in this email, you know, there's a few things that makes me angry. I mean, look at the language they use, you know, makes me cringe. Sentence, we think it will help you keep track of your time. What does that mean? We think it will help you keep track of your time. Like, you know, none of us got any track of time sense whatsoever. And, you know, so things like that makes you think, God, what am I reading? Anyway, you're going to read it with me now. Back to the issue. Okay, on the 23rd of next January, which is next week, they are introducing an 10-hour on-trip time limit. Now this is quite important to take. 10-hour on-trip time limit, where after that time, basically your app will not operate for 6 hours. You got it? Okay, in a nutshell, what he's saying is, if you came out to work and you put your app on, you'll be granted 10 hours of work, right? But not 10 hours of on time, but 10 hours of time you'll be carrying passengers in your car. I.e., when you accept a job, if you waited 2 hours, it doesn't count towards your 10 hours. The only time you'll start your countdown is the time you've pressed start trip, and when you've completed trip, the counter stops, and whatever that time is will be deducted from your 10-hour allocated time. So that's what it's all about. And once you reached that 10 hours, your app will basically stop working, and you won't be able to turn it on or make it work for 6 hours. Then it resets itself basically, and it could work for another 10 hours. And also within that app, the feature, you know, there'll be some sort of a timer where you'll tell you how many hours, how many on trip time you got left, and what remains, and how much you've done, and all them sort of things. You know, obviously we'll have a clear picture once this gets introduced next week. Now also, on this video, what I wanted to concentrate was on, you know, so what brings about this feature. You know, again, quickly, another thing I'll mention: if you're thinking you're going to actually work 10 hours where you're going to have passengers in your car, think again. It is not going to happen. You need not worry the slightest. There's no way you will be able to have 10 hours of passengers in your car unless you're working, I would say, probably 15-16 hour shift, you know. So this will apply to, I don't know, I'm taking a very random guess, probably 99% of the drivers it will not be affected. So if you're in that unique 1%, that's the only percent that it's going to affect, you know. So most of us, 99% of us, probably wouldn't even, you know, it's not going to be affected whatsoever. So what I want to talk to you, as I said before, was what brings out Uber introducing this, you know, so somewhat stupid thing, right? Right, firstly, they've done this because they're going to use this as a marketing tool. And, we all know Uber, they don't do anything, if there's nothing that's going to benefit them at the same time. And for them benefiting, it means pure marketing. So if you got a riders app, you'll see from next week, they'll be telling everyone how our drivers are fresh as a daisy and how they've done something that no other taxi base has done before, how they still continue to revolutionize the actual taxi trade. The PR stunts will be non-ending. And so, that's where Uber lead the way. They're basically in council meetings, anywhere, that's what they'll be telling people. Look, we are taking this safety thing for drivers, for our passengers, very, very serious, and we are introducing this 10-hour limit when they can't work. And they probably wouldn't break it down. If Uber, they'll probably just say, after 10 hours they won't be able to work, but they will not break it down to actually is 10 hours of on-trip time, which could mean sometimes you're working a far lot more than what you normally would do. Right? So who are the culprits in this? And I've talked about this in a lot of my videos. There's people that can't keep their fingers out of this trade for whatever reason. Okay, and I'll tell you the three main contenders for this culprit award. Right, firstly is the press. Now, Uber over the time has created loads of new journalists on their journey. So there's journalists that actually prey on Uber to give them news so they could write a story about them. And what angers me about these kind of journalists is like they have not done a day's work as a taxi driver, and they continue to spout out suggestions and theories which basically makes the public scared. And and that's their job, to make the public scared, because that's what sells newspapers. And and so these people actually do make my they just make me angry. You'll see journalists writing about Uber day in, day out, and most of the time it's just rubbish. And so so these are these are one of my first contenders. Secondly, the politicians. Another set of clowns who basically know nothing about this trade, but they have to be seen doing something. And they're putting a lot of pressure on Uber to do the right thing. So they're going around telling Uber, look, you need to do this, do that, without even realizing what that actually means for the actual drivers who are behind the wheels, like you and me. And so they are one of the culprits that's made this thing, the 10-hour thing to come along. And sometimes I ask myself, well, if you're so, as a politician, concerned about people driving habits on the road, you never mentioned this when you had, when people were doing, on the news especially, when nurses and doctors are doing 10, 15, 20-hour shift, for somehow they're okay to drive back home safely without colliding with other public on the roads. Well, are they? The politicians, well, they never mentioned that before, have they? For some reason, a taxi driver who does 10 hours seems to be more incapable of driving than a doctor or a nurse that's just done 10, 15 hours, on duty. And why not let's expand this a lot more further? Why not go into it as in like anyone who does 10, 15 hours work in factories, whatever, can't drive back home because they're not capable of driving back home safely. So these politicians who are setting pressure on Uber to change things really need to look at themselves first. And my favorite contender as well for this award is the trade unions. You know, and I am talking about the likes of, you know, IWGB, who, you know, initially were crying out, you know, publicly, and basically they went, you know, saying, you know, these drivers are working so many hours, they're living in the car, they're driving dangerously, you know, we need to do something about this. And the only way that solves that problem is by paying them minimum wage and a bit of holiday. And they won't be doing that 15 hours. We'll all be safe because we'll all be working less because we're on X amount of money. You know, and that hasn't worked. It's actually backfired. You know, it's like the cake has been thrown on the face. Because these unions, they can't see over the fence. It doesn't, you know, work. A simple theory like that, where you're going around saying we're representing drivers and our drivers are dangerous on the roads because they're working so many hours, you know, they're living in the cars, and, you know, the only way that's going to be solved is by, you know, giving them a pay rise and giving them some holidays and a sick pay. So in a way, real shame on them, you know, and they will obviously come back with something else now and try and dress this up. And, you know, if anything, I actually want them to fight for the drivers now, fight against Uber and say, look, Uber, you've done this wrong. And say, look, the drivers, you know, you can't put limit on drivers. And also take away everything we said before. You know, we didn't really mean it when we said, you know, these drivers are driving dangerously or living in the car. A lot of shambles. Anyway, I better finish this video. It's been going long enough. I'll speak to you soon. Enjoy tonight. Bye bye now.